Hey, everybody. Thank you for coming to another episode of King Shit Talk. I really appreciate you. I'm hoping everything goes smoothly tonight because it's a very deep subject we have on tonight. I think a lot of people will get a lot of release from it, a lot of healing will come from it. It is going to be on domestic violence. I have some young ladies and a gentleman that's supposed to come on tonight. Hopefully, the internet will stay intact. It's acting like we got little gnomes on top of the house pulling on something right now. But we'll jump right into this. I have Miss Tiara here, Miss Lisa, Miss TT, Miss Cookie. I'm going to bring them up one by one. And I do have some questions that I would like to ask because though I know some people that have been through domestic violence, I'm no expert at all. I understand that there are a lot of things that go on with DV that a lot of us, especially men that aren't the aggressor, don't know about. And there's also a young gentleman that's supposed to be here tonight. I'm hoping he comes on because he actually has dealt with this as well. And I know a lot of times we don't hear about men going through it, but they most definitely can go through it as well. Um, I'm going to bring my guest up now, and I will let them take turns with introducing themselves and telling you guys a little bit about themselves because I don't want to mess anything up. So I think I'll let them do it. Miss Tiara, can you start?
Good evening, everybody. Can everybody hear me? Well,
Yeah, we
Yes.
can.
can y'all hear me? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. My name is Tiara. I'm currently in Florida. I'm a mental health therapist here. I've experienced domestic violence in my last marriage. Um, so do you want me to go right ahead or how you want
Well,
me to
let me first say, can everyone? Well, no, don't get into your story yet. Let's go over to Lisa and let her introduce herself
go?
first.
Okay.
But can everyone mute your mics while the other person is talking? Because I hear a little feedback.
Hey, I'm Lisa. I'm from the Caribbean, but I live in Canada right now. I work in mental health. I have not personally experienced domestic violence, but it's been very, very close to home with family members and friends. So it's a very personal subject for me.
Thank you, Miss TT. Did you freeze up, TT? Let's go to Cookie. Cookie just dropped. Okay, let's go to. Can you hear us, TT? Okay, she may be frozen. Tiara, let's hear your story.
Okay. Me and my ex, we met in the military. We met in the Army National Guard. It was one of the typical, soldier got a crush on an NCO type thing. We both was crushing on each other. He was married at the time. I was going through a divorce at the time. So, I just thought, we could just do whatever we do. So fast forward, I end up going active duty in the Army, and I end up sending him a letter because we lost contact with each other. And I end up sending him a letter to his home, and he ended up getting a letter, and he reached out to me. And then we were good after that. So it's like right after he reached out to me, we started cutting with each other again and everything. So fast forward, I ended up getting out the military in 1st of 2016. And my initial plan was to, start my life over in Raleigh and just, live my life with me and my, and me still talking or whatever. And then just one day out of the blue, it's like, you know what? Like good friends, why don't we just go ahead and get married? Like, what's gonna happen, And so I agreed. I was like, okay, nothing's gonna happen. Yeah, it was terrible. We ended up getting married, and it's like I started seeing little things. Notice he was still connecting with his ex-girlfriend at the time. They were still communicating. And then I noticed that he started to hear voices, and he was saying that the voices would tell him to do stuff. So even right in the beginning, we always just had that. We just always struggled in the beginning because he always wanted to reach out to his ex, or he didn't really matter how I felt about it. But anyway, fast forward, I end up moving out and I end up getting my own place. And I had my youngest son at the time. I dropped him off at daycare. So, and I went back to the house, and I remember him calling me on the phone. I answered. I was like, what? We arguing back and forth. And I was like, I don't want to be with you no more. Let's just end it, go our separate ways. And that wasn't. Hear me? I'm sorry. And
Yeah,
my mic was muted.
Yeah.
So at the time, he ended up coming over to my house. And then I was laying on my left side, and he ended up pulling out a 9mm and held it to my temples. And he was like, "You gonna talk to me? You gonna talk to me?" And I started crying hysterical because I just dropped my son off at daycare, like literally within minutes before it happened. And then my immediate mind was like, okay, if this dude's gonna kill me, he's gonna kill me now. And then like it just so much was just going through my mind. So then he ends up retracting the gun, and I reached for my phone, and he took my phone, so I couldn't call 911. So then I run over to the closet to get some clothes so I could get dressed to leave the house. He was blocking that. And then he ends up getting a phone call from his sister. And I'm screaming and I'm crying in the back, hysterical. I'm like, call help. And I guess his sister asked, what's going on? And he was like, oh, nothing. She making it up. Oh, nothing. She making it up. And I'm like, why would I make this up? So we going back and forth. Meanwhile, he's like hitting me and pushing me and everything. And I had bruises all over my body. So then he ends up leaving, and I end up going to the local police department, and I end up pressing charges. He served a total of 71 or 72 days in jail. Now, during this time, it was the typical, you're not supposed to talk to each other because you had a restraining order and everything. So initially, we weren't supposed to be talking to each other, but I forgave him. I did forgive him because I was so adamant on wanting my marriage to work. So I ended up forgiving him, and he ended up getting out, and it was like God was just things. He was like, you trying to and here you are. Do you treat him like, because my thing was at the time when we used to argue, I was very slick with my tongue, my mouth. And I used to say things like, oh, I don't need you. I don't want you, da, 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 da. So I think in that aspect, it was tearing him down instead of building him up. I'm not making no excuses or anything, but, God was revealing to me how I messed up as well. So during that time, we kept breaking up, getting back together, and it was like a repetitive cycle for me. Like, this is my comfort, and I don't want to leave. I don't want to start, or I just want to stay with him. And it's just like one day a light bulb went off and was like, girl, like, what are you doing? Just go, like, go, leave. So I left and I haven't looked back since. And that has been 2 years now. And I felt so good now that I did that. My kids didn't like him. My family didn't like him. And it was just so much in such a little time, so that was my lesson learned throughout that relationship.
Now, has he tried to get in contact with you since then?
No, I don't want no contact with him. But I was hearing voices, and he's voices. He was diagnosed. I didn't.
Okay,
didn't hear what you said.
Yeah, there was a pause. It was a lag in it, and what you were saying. Yeah, I can hear you now.
He was diagnosed. He was supposed to be taking medication, and he never took. Every time they would send him medication, he would flush it down the toilet. And that was the first of me with somebody with a mental ailment. It was to the point where the stuff he used to say didn't make sense. He would say stuff like, my family was gonna kill him. He just used to say the most of him. Every time we would go to church, he would think that the people at church was against him. It was just so much. And I was like, I've never dealt with a person dealing with him. And it was the worst.
And was he ever this way around, your kids?
No.
No, he wasn't.
No.
Well, there are a lot more questions I have that we'll get into once we get around the circle. But Ms. Cookie, you've been waiting. I don't think you were here to get a chance to introduce yourself to the people. So could you please introduce yourself to the people, please? Your mic is muted. She'll probably come back. Okay, Lisa, let's tell us about some of your experiences.
Wow. So my first experience with domestic violence was, I grew up around it. Okay, in my community, I'd see women get slapped in the face, punched in the face, kicked in the streets. Some heavy stuff. But in my personal life, I saw a family member get beaten. Like, I remember the perpetrator, should I say that? He used a basin and slapped the woman in her head, and it split. And then they were, I guess, struggling is what you'd call it, and she fell to the ground and he stepped in her stomach.
Oh, wow.
And me and my sister, at this time, we were probably around, I want to say between 5 and 7. And we jumped on his back, both of us. Because even though we were young, we knew that this wasn't right.
Mm-hmm.
And we were brave enough to do something, even though, I mean, we it didn't stop him. It didn't stop him, but that was the most aggressive, the most violent episode I've seen. But before that, it's always the verbal abuse. It's always the criticism. It's always like those are always telltale signs that I see, that I've seen. It may not be the same for everybody, but it's the belittling and the verbal abuse that precipitates the physical abuse. I think it stems from insecurity because a lot of the times it was in situations where I felt like the man was insecure. Like maybe he thought she was too pretty for him. Maybe he thought, he wasn't deserving of her. So, in order for you to abuse a person, I feel like you got to break them down. You got to break them down verbally until they start believing that, you know what, this person is my only option. Or there's also dependency, which is if you're physically, financially, emotionally dependent on a person, I feel like that precipitates the abuse. So me, my 5 to 7 year old self, I said, that's never going to be me. I told myself that when I was a kid, that's never going to be me. Okay, fast forward. I'm in university and I had classes with this woman who was Middle East. Oh, no, she has a Middle Eastern background, but she's from the Caribbean. Because in the Caribbean, there's a bunch of different cultures and stuff. And whenever she's in class, I'd always hear her bangles jingling because she'd always wear bangles. And then there were some days I didn't hear her bangles jingling. And I said, like, how come she's not here? Then we became friends. And she told me that on the days where she wasn't in class, it was because she's gotten beaten up. And she had broken ribs. She had a broken ankle, I think, because he slammed her into the door and the doorknob caused her ribs to break, like her body connecting with the doorknob. And she was such a pretty girl. Pretty. And you would never, ever, ever think that she'd be experiencing that. And I never saw her bruises. But I guess, she took time to heal before she came back to class. She was an athlete and she always had exercising equipment at home so she could still exercise instead of going to the gym. I'm not really sure how she ended up kind of breaking it off with him, but I remember her being so scared. She was so scared whenever I'd invite her out, to go like to the club or something. She'd always be so scared that I'd say, "You're with me. What is he gonna do? You think I'm gonna stand by and he's just gonna run upon you? Girl, you crazy." Um, sorry, I didn't mean that. Like,
You're fine.
yeah. So I assured her that nothing's gonna happen. Like, there's nothing he can do. He can't run upon us. Like, the laws in Canada, I feel like they're kind of different in regards to stuff like that. Yeah, she had the verbal abuse. She had him believing or he had her believing that he was the best and all of that. She was emotionally dependent on him. Um, One thing I do know from the multiple experiences I've had with that is you can't just tell a person to leave. Telling a person to leave is not going to do anything. You have to help them and support them to make them believe that they're good enough and better than taking that abuse. Like if it's somebody who's financially dependent on the abuser, you got to help them to be financially independent, provide them with support, whatever it is. Like you have to let the person walk away. You can't just say leave and they're gonna leave. and
Yeah, because
and
at the end of the day, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. I was just going to say at the end of the day, it boils down to being that person's choice, because I've heard a lot of people say that they'll, whether it's family members or friends, it's almost like the more that they try to push the person to leave, the more the person actually stays, because it has to be their decision. They have to actually want to leave.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And when you attack a person on a mental level, like when you let a person believe that you're their only choice, you're their only option, you're the best for them, they believe that, you know.
Hmm.
Um, and once again, of course, everyone's situation is not going to be the same, but that's been my experience. And I've never, from that day when I told myself that's never going to be me, I've never experienced that at all. Like no one's ever laid a hand on me like a partner ever.
Well,
I
I'm
wouldn't
definitely
allow
glad.
it. Oh God, I would not allow it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that, and thank you for sharing that as well. I have a plethora of questions for you ladies that I'll get to in due time. But Miss TT, you want to tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. I'm Teresa Riley, and I live in Jamestown, New York. My domestic violence story, I can say, I think I didn't have an upbringing where somebody was telling me what was right and wrong in a relationship. I didn't live at home with my mom and dad. I was in a foster home, so like at a certain age, you get released from the home. So basically, at like 13, I was living on and off with different friends and stuff. So, me personally, I think my domestic violence started early when I was like maybe 14, 15. I always thought that maybe, well, I did think that it was supposed to be like that. Like maybe he loves me. He hit me. He loves me. So I thought that was the cycle I was supposed to live. So I was always in and out of domestic violent relationships, if that makes sense, because I thought that's how I was supposed to have relationships. So I always found the bad apple, even though they're not always bad apples. There's always something good in them that you see. Um, I didn't start getting like staying in a domestic violent situation until I was um about 23. I didn't know I was pregnant, and I ended up meeting someone that I had already knew for a while. He was the talk of the town. Like they said that he used to beat women and this and the third, but you're always like, oh, he's not gonna do it to me. I'm different. I'm not gonna do what she did, or you always try to find a reason to make up for them or whatever. So I stayed with him, and first couple months was fine and all dandy and lovable and whatever. And then I would see like different signs, like he would come and he'd be angry, upset, yell. But when the first time he threw me across the room, I thought it was like only like on TV you see it when a woman is picked up and is thrown. And that was like my first time that he had done that. Like before that, he would kick me out of my house. I had 2 other kids before I met him. So I had 2 other kids in my home. He would kick me out and tell me that I would have to leave. They weren't his kids. And he would kick me out of my house and keep the kids in the house. So I always used to be scared, stay by my house, didn't want to leave. Where I live, you can tell the police that a man right now is chasing me with a knife, and they just literally, you really have to end up in the hospital or dead before they do anything, basically. So where I lived at, the more I noticed things changing, the more he was more aggressive, putting his hands on me. We would drive like 30 minutes away from our town. He would kick me out of the car in the wintertime with no jacket on and leave me there. He would have me leave my house if he was in a bad mood, or come to find out he was cheating on me too. So when she would make him upset, he would come to my house and take it out on me, basically. So the police were notified a couple times about it. They wouldn't let me put a order of protection. There's really nothing about you have to get out of my house because he would still come in, kick it in. There wasn't no getting rid of him, basically. He hit me in the face with a baseball bat when I was 6 months pregnant. He cracked my back of my head and skull open with a hammer in front of the police, and they didn't do anything.
And where do you live again?
In Jamestown. This happened in Dunkirk, New York.
Wow.
And the fire department was right across the street from my house, like literally, and they had big windows. And the day he hit me in my face with a wiffle ball bat, they sat there and watched it as I was trying to leave my house to get away from the situation. He had like pulled a knot of my hair out. And I knew by then he wasn't going to do anything to my kids. So I just felt like if I got away and I could get help somewhere, somebody would see me, help me, whatever. But it was never like I could stop the police and say, hey, he's beating me up, blood coming out, nothing out of my face, nothing. They didn't do anything, nothing, not at all. A couple weeks after that, he hit me in the back of the head with a hammer, the claw part. And the police ended up showing up, and he told them to leave. And he put a towel on top of my head and made me drive 2 hours away from my house. And made me sorry.
No, you're fine.
Made us drive almost like 2 hours away from where we lived. And the towel, I could remember, was just keep getting bloodier and bloodier, and I was getting dizzy, and I kept asking him if he would take me to the hospital, and he kept telling me no. And at that time, I was pregnant with his kid. And basically, there was like no help from our community, no help. His mom, I could call his mom. She was a really church-going woman. She knew that he had issues. He was taking medicine that he wasn't taking. And the only time he would take it was when he was in jail. The only way I got away from him was he had beat up the girl that he was cheating on me with. He had beat her up with a mallet and hit her in the head with it. And she pressed charges. So that's how I got away from the situation. But it took him 5 months to catch him because he went on the run for 5 months. I ended up having my baby from him, who is now, she's 21 years old. Knowing that he was, a domestic violence type of man, I didn't kind of want him with my daughter by herself. But the older she got, I just felt like I would never keep any of my kids from their fathers, no matter what our situation was. I never wanted my kids to not want to be around their fathers. Well, during one summer, he had got out of jail from doing 5 years for beating up that girl with the mallet. Around the same time, he busted my head open with the hammer. And had Jana. And that's his daughter's name. He had Jana. And Jana was with his girlfriend while he was out hanging out wherever. And when he came home at 2 o'clock in the morning, she claimed that Jana had cussed at her. And at the time, Jana was maybe 4 or 5 years old. Um, and I remember something telling me she was 30 minutes away from where I live. So something was telling me to go stay in the same town as her. So I went there and I stayed at my friend's house, and something had told me something was wrong. And every day I was calling and he would let me talk to her. And this specific day he was like, you can't talk to her. Don't call her no more. He was like, when she gets ready to come home, then you can talk to her. You don't need to call her every day. And I'm like, yes, I do need to call her every day. I need to know if she's okay. So I called back the next day to talk to her. No answer. The next day, no answer. A Sunday came, and it was, she goes to church with her grandmother, and her grandmother expects her to be at church no matter where she's at. And he went to go take her to the church, and my first baby father had seen her, and she was wearing boy shorts that were down to her ankles. But as she was proceeding to walk, she had blood on her socks. Blood on the back of her socks, and they could see bruises on her ankles. So I immediately flipped out and was trying to find her or whatever, and he wouldn't bring me to her. And someone had took her from church and brought her to me where I was at. And I took her in the bathroom, and when I took her in the bathroom and pulled her pants down, her butt was blooded. He had beat her with a belt buckle because he said that she had cussed out his girlfriend. Sorry. I asked her what happened. By then, the police were called. This is what was so funny. The police were called, and I'm in the bathroom crying, trying to take her underwear off because it was sticking. She said that it would stick all the time to her because obviously they weren't putting nothing on it. And she couldn't sit. And as I'm trying to help my kid, the police pull up at my friend's house and try to arrest me and said it was me that did it. And they never let me talk or anything. They took me to the police station with her. And she had finally told him that he did it so that they would release me. They put him in jail, but he went on the run, of course, for a couple months till they caught him. And he was supposed to do 5 years. But I know he was recently released, not doing the whole 5 years. Caught another domestic violence case, and that's what he continues to do all the time. But I stayed with him because I felt like he was like she was saying in the corner, I think her name was Lisa, if you're benefiting from it, or he's taking care of you, or your bills are being paid, or and things are getting done. I think I felt like that, and he would beat me up and then take me to the mall and spend $1,000. So it was like, okay, if I take this baseball bat, I'm gonna go to the store anyways. If I, if I just suck it up, and I'm still gonna have my rent paid, my kids are still gonna have somewhere to live. You know what I mean? So it was like, I did it because of that. I did it because I wanted to make sure I was gonna be okay. But when I knew that it wasn't okay to be okay like that and live like that, and I didn't know how to get away, no one knows how happy I was when he did get picked up for another charge from somewhere else, because it was the only way I was going to get away. But then when it happened to my daughter, it was heartbreaking. It was rough. She had to go to court and testify, I guess, against them. Yes, she did. She was scared, so they did it over a video. But I still, to that moment, told my daughter, he's mental. He has mental issues. There's nothing you can do for someone that doesn't want to take their medication. There's nothing you can do with somebody that doesn't want to help themselves. So I told her she can't stop loving her dad. We have to find understanding. I'm not going to tell you can love him and you can't love him, because it's your dad, and the older you get, you'll realize what you want to do. So I still let visits go, but they had to be supervised. So they were supervised, but where there was another judge in another county that gave us the order of protection, and he had kept that on when I say that he was serious about keeping that on, he kept it on until she was 18. So unless she was supervised with it, she'll tell you when she wants to go with him and when she doesn't, when she's uncomfortable, when she's not. But there's been incidents to this day that recently, a couple months ago, he came here and he didn't like what she said to him or how she said it. And he chased her up the stairs and was in her room choking her and putting his hands on her. So I ran up there and I kicked him out of my house. But it's like, if that's your kid, I didn't understand. Like, I could see you doing it to me, but why would you do it to your daughter? Like, she doesn't need to grow up and feel like that's how she should be treated by a man or a female, because my daughter is gay. So whether it's a female or a male, she shouldn't feel like that's how type of life she should live. And I never known how to get out of that. So for a while, my kids have seen me in domestic violent relationships. And it's kind of hard. So I just say to myself now, but I was married, but he was always in and out of jail. So my kids knew him as a stepdad, but he was always in and out of jail for like 9 years. And then when he got out, he found out he had cancer, and then he passed away a couple months after that. So he was only out on the street really for like 15 years. And really only got to be out on the street for 5 of them. So it's like, I don't know what type of relationship I'm supposed to have. I'm feel like that's the type of life I'm supposed to have. So I just don't have relationships because I don't want my kids to feel like that's how life is supposed to be. So no, I just don't have anybody around me.
Yeah, that's tough and so unfortunate. I'm heartbroken, but I'm so happy that you aren't in that situation now. Because
Thank you, William, too.
Nobody should have to go through that for any reason at all. And I'm vexed at how law enforcement allowed it to go on as long as they did.
Where I live right now, where I live right now, 2 blocks up behind me where I live, a lady was in a relationship with a man, and she had ended up breaking up with him, things like that, whatever the case may be. She filed an assault charge on him and tried to do a lot of reports on him. He went there last night and shot her while her kids were in the house. Her 13-year-old son found her because he was upset, and then went to his other girlfriend's house and started her car on fire. So it's like our police force doesn't actually care. They rather see somebody calling and saying, like, it's really bad out here. Like, a lot of us could lose our lives behind the system, and the system's not even helping us at all.
Wow.
At all.
Well, I'm definitely I got to come back to you, TT, and ask you some questions. Take you a breather, and know that you do have people in your corner. You know, you can always talk to me. I'm sure you can talk to these other sisters up here. You always have somebody in your corner.
Thank you.
Miss Cookie.
I'm so sorry, y'all. So most of my adult relationships have been abusive in one way or another. My first marriage, I got married when I was in my early 20s. I thought I was marrying a good Christian man. He was in the church. He was actually a drummer at a church that was known by a lot of people. And he just started doing things that was questionable from the beginning. And I had tried to like break it off with him, but he assured me that this was just a fluke. And I remember one time he smacked me in my face in front of my friends. And my friend was like, you got to cut that off. Like and I was like, I don't understand. Like, he's a good Christian man. I was a teen mom. So I had a toddler at the time. She was 2. And, everybody else was like, oh, he's such a good guy. You know, he goes to church every Sunday. He's in the gospel band. He's a good guy. And I was like, why am I not seeing this behind closed doors? Because he is a monster. I mean, the emotional and mental abuse And not so much the physical abuse anymore because I'm 6'3", so he's like 6'1". And at first I took it, like I would take the smacks in the face or the, and eventually I was like, I'm about to body slam this dude if he put his hands on me again. So it became like, because he couldn't physically overpower me, he would just mentally abuse me. And I remember him dropping me off on the side of the road in the cold with no coat and throwing my phone and stuff like that. I mean, he would tell people I was crazy, and I would be acting out because of the stuff that he would do behind closed doors. And then I would be in front of people and he'd be like, see how crazy she's acting? And he'd be acting all normal. And I'd be like, nobody would understand. They all thought I was crazy. And then I got pregnant. And so I had really bad postpartum depression. And so he would just expose the postpartum depression on top of the depression and the abuse that I was going through. It took many years for people to finally see the stuff that he would do behind closed doors, because he started doing it to the other girlfriends. And he slipped up one time and they caught him in the act of doing some wild stuff. That was my first husband. I dated a guy that I knew from high school. And one night he had a situation. There was a issue one night, sexual situation. And he was frustrated with me because of his performance. And I was trying to calm him down for like 45 minutes. He body slammed me over my sofa. And I tried to run out the house. He ended up chasing me around my neighborhood. I couldn't even get the neighbors to call the police because it was late at night. They were scared. And finally, I got one lady to call the police. And as the police were pulling up, he was walking up on me in the dark. And they arrested him, and he went to jail for a couple of days. And I requested that he go to domestic violence and anger management due to the history that I knew about him. But I also learned from all of this stuff is that I ended up attracting hurt people because of my low self-esteem, but I'm a good person deep down inside. And so they saw that part of me and they're hurt. And so I had to work on my self-esteem. I had to work on the way I saw myself in order for me to then see these people for who they were, because I saw the good in them. I saw the positive in them rather than the abusive people that they were. And, unfortunately, my daughter, she's 18 now. She's about to graduate. And, the same as TT, you have to try to train them how to deal with their parent, because he's not physically abusive to my daughters, but he is emotionally abusive to them. And so, I have to try to teach them that it's not personal. It's just, that's who he is. And so it's been difficult over the years. Like I choose not to deal with him at all. Like if I don't have to talk to him, if I don't have to see him, I'm good. But when we have to see each other, like we had prom last weekend, and I tried not to say anything to him, but we were, I did have like a couple of words, but yeah, you end up learning to cope the best way. And then you find yourself like not wanting to date because you're scared. You're afraid to pick men, but we have to do work after domestic violence so that we can heal, so that we can teach our children to do better, to choose better, so they can see the warning signs. And then we have to work on our self-esteem as well, because those are the things that'll help us pick better in the future. Because there are still good men out there. But yeah, that's kind of the gist of what happened for me.
I could tell you it's huge of you to even say that there are still good men out there, because the amount of people and women in particular that go through things like this, I know for a bona fide fact that if I went through 10% of what I've heard thus far, I wouldn't want to deal with anybody. So to still have that vision that, okay, even though I've been through something, I know that that's not everyone. I commend you all. I commend you for that. I commend you for still allowing your heart to be open, still allowing your spirit to be open, and even you, Cookie, was saying that you deal with him, but even though you don't want to deal with him because you know that your children are connected to him, and to tell them and to soothe them with the it's not personal, this is just who he is. That's big in itself, because there's a lot less going on that some women will degrade the father. Some women will talk bad about the father, and they aren't even dealing with domestic violence or anything like that. So it shows the love that you have for your children and wanting them to have as positive a situation as possible, to still impart in them, to let them know that, okay, even though some of these bad things are going on, you try to show them the light in their father as well. So I commend you for that. Miss Sims, how are you? You're muted right now. Oh, hold on one second. Hold on one second, nature. Tiara, do I have to unmute you, or do you have to unmute yourself? Okay, there you go.
I just unmuted myself. I want to say that we as women, we are. I'm sorry, what did you say? Can you hear me?
No, I didn't say anything. I can hear you.
Can y'all hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I was just gonna say, we as women, we are naturally nurturers. So it's like, even though we know a situation isn't good, we still fight for it, because that's just in our DNA to be nurturers. You know, we think we can help. We think we could fix anybody, you know, and a lot of it comes from generational curses from one family to the next, you know, and then people going from one situation to the next, not fully healed, still thinking about what such and such did in such and such relationship, instead of taking that time to actually dig through to get to the root of the problem.
That is absolutely correct. Those are some great points. Miss Datria.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, everyone. And thank you so much, Salih, for having me on the show and allowing me to share. I know our pain is our purpose, and our pain and our struggles can definitely, even though we hate that we, go through things in life, because we all have life that happens to every one of us. But I'm thankful that, my story, my childhood can be a blessing and be able to give someone else hope. So I could identify with what Lisa shared, TT, Cookie, Tiara, what you were saying, generational. It is sometimes things can continue to happen in a cycle, but we have to, someone in that family got to say, okay, it's got to stop here. So it's not going to go to that next generation. So really, I didn't even know what I was going to share. This is my first time being on a live stream on YouTube. But so thank you. I'm honored to share it. At first, I was a little bit scared at first, because I have shared my story individually with people, but I've never gone live. And that's because I was always grown up to keep everything, within your home, not to share what's going on in your home. But I know now, for myself, being exposed to different people and connected with different people, that you need to talk about it, because that's the only way that you're going to heal. And so, so I grew up in domestic violence in a childhood, and it was like a normal life for me. And I still learned to function in it. So my mom was a battered wife, abused physically and verbally. And my grandmother raised us when my dad left. And that's one reason why, too, I haven't talked about it publicly, because I'm a daddy's girl. I love my dad, even though, he used to beat my mom, and I couldn't understand it. And he was an alcoholic, which makes it no excuse. And then he later on got on drugs, but then he recovered. He passed away last year, but I still love him dearly. And I thank God that our story is ending, but we still have cycles that still need to be broken. But first of all, do you mind if I just read a poem? And you all may have heard this poem before.
I don't mind at all.
All right. So the name of the poem is I Got Flowers Today. And it just reminded me too of some things in my life and, and growing up and everything. It said, I got flowers today. It wasn't my birthday or any other special day. We had our first argument last night, and he said a lot of cruel things that really hurt. I know that he is sorry and didn't mean to say the things he said because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. It wasn't our anniversary or any other special day. Last night, he threw me into a wall and started to choke me. It seemed like a nightmare. I couldn't believe that it was real. I woke up this morning sore and bruised all over. I know he must be sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. It wasn't our anniversary or any other special day. Last night, he threw me into a wall and then started choking me. It seemed unreal, a nightmare, but you wake up from nightmares. And I woke up this morning sore and bruised all over. I know he is sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today, and it wasn't Valentine's Day or any other special day. Last night, he beat me and threatened to kill me. Makeup and long sleeves didn't hide the cuts and bruises this time. I couldn't go to work because I didn't want anyone to know, but I know he's sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today, and it wasn't Mother's Day or any other special day. Last night, he beat me again. It was worse than all the other times. If I leave him, what will I do? How will I take care of the kids? What about money? I'm afraid of him, but I'm too scared and dependent to leave him. But he must be sorry because he sent me flowers today. I got flowers today. Today was a special day. It was the day of my funeral. Last night, he killed me. If only I would have gathered the courage and strength to leave. I could have received help from the women's shelter, but I didn't ask for their help. So I got flowers for the last time. And this poem was dedicated to battered women by Paulette Kelly. And I heard this poem for the first time when I was going through a course for getting certified to be a life coach and relationship coach. And it just touched me because I could identify with some of those things, because I couldn't understand why my mother wouldn't leave my father, even though I loved my father. And there were so many times it was supposed to be, that was the final time that she was going to leave him. We would go to shelters, not because we didn't have family, but we lived in shelters. And then finally, when he had so many warrants against him for other stuff, he left in my 11th grade year. And it broke my heart because I still love my daddy and I wanted to live with my daddy and I missed him. So we lived with my grandparents, and my grandmother pretty much raised us because my mom went through a lot of depression, and it affected her and our children. And, me, I'm the oldest of 4 girls. It affected us. So my 3 younger sisters pretty much looked up to me, and I was always the strong one. They looked up to me as a mother figure. And so I witnessed my father. Well, first of all, my purpose here, just getting through everything that I've gone through, even as a child, I know that God was, watching over me, because still, in spite of all of the circumstances I went through, I still was an honor roll student in the Beta Club. God will connect me with, people, teachers back in the day were like your family, and so I would talk to counselors, and they couldn't understand why I really didn't need counseling. But, even as an adult now, going through domestic violence growing up, you need therapy, and you need, and that was something that really wasn't talked about in my younger days. My mother was, she suffered with mental illness and everything, and they just heavily medicated her. So my grandmother did the best that she could, but then I witnessed my grandmother being verbally abused by my grandfather. I think he hit her one time from what I heard, but I didn't see that and witness that. But I actually witnessed my father beat my mom. My mom used to have black eyes when she was pregnant with one of my younger sisters. He beat her when she was pregnant. There was times she could never keep a job because she was always beat up, and she would cover it up. And he would do it when he started drinking, and then the next day it was almost like we didn't even talk about it. It was just like we just let it go, and like he didn't even remember, but he saw the broken furniture and everything. I even saw him put fire to her head. I can still visualize that and remember that. And I used to be paralyzed sometimes. My sisters would be, they wouldn't do anything. And sometimes our family members, our cousins would say, why don't y'all, because my mom's older sister, she used to get beat by her husband, but her kids, she had boys. It was just 4 girls. And she was like, why don't y'all do something? And it was out, but we would call the police. And sometimes I would run out of the house and go to the neighbor's house and call the police. So the police always helped us. And, so I always thought of the police of someone that's gonna, help. That's what you need to do. And so we did. And we stayed in shelters, but so I know that my purpose is to break generational curses, break cycles, for me. And, sometimes you can attract, like, I think it was Cookie that was saying, you can attract those types of people that, and then it's just certain behaviors that we probably, that we definitely should not just accept. But my purpose is to break poverty mindsets and to break generational curses. And pretty much just being a source of hope for people, to give people hope, because I know throughout the years and, just trust and putting my total trust in the Lord, that has been my primary source. But later on, I'm not sure how this show is set up, but I'm going to share a little bit more about my childhood, and then, just give you guys some resources for a source of hope, because sometimes, you need resources for shelter. There's a victims advocate here, and I live in Simpsonville, South Carolina, that I'm close with, that there's some women that have, reached out to me that need shelter or need food for their children, or they need Christmas for their children, and then they need legal advice. Recently, a young lady called me from Philadelphia needing some assistance, just needing legal advice because it flipped back on her. The police, she put a restraining order against him, and then it flipped on her. The police ended up arresting her. He arrested him and arrested her too. And then she got her child taken away. And from what I've seen, she's a great mother. So I don't even understand that. So right now she's in the midst of that right now. But but there is help out there that we can get, and resources out there. I know you can call 211 for support to get shelter. But yes, Robin, is generational cycles that definitely need to be broken. And then, but having that therapy, having those counselors, they can give you a plan of action, something to help you. Yes, most definitely. And I was going to post some numbers as well. I know there's different numbers but that's a main number for that tier that you just posted. That's for, is that for the United States, for United States, or? Yes, that is, I believe so. But anyway, I think, God, that I am an overcomer. I'm trying to stay on task of what I said I was going to talk about. But just growing up in that domestic violence, I'm thankful that God just placed me around people that can, help me overcome and be able to get resources, and also be able to help and give hope to other women. And I'll put in the chat also those lists of numbers of resources that I have. And just want us all, will you be coming back to me or asking me questions? Because I wanted to definitely end with.
Oh yeah, definitely. I'm about to get into some questions now for all of you, actually. But I'm gonna throw this number up real quick, and then we'll get into some questions. But and for those on the Wisdom app that haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel that can't see this right now, the number that I just put up is 800-799-7233. Subscribe to the YouTube channel King Shit Productions so you can see this in real time, and you can not only hear these ladies' voices, but you can put a face to the voice. And the first question that I have, and I'll just go around. I'll start with Tiara, then we'll go to Lisa, then TT, then Daytra, then Cookie. But I've heard oftentimes people have said that reasons why, well, women have said some of the reasons why they've stayed have been children. Reasons why they didn't leave was finances and stuff like that. So in you guys' experience, were you afraid to leave? And if you were afraid to leave, what were you afraid of that would happen? Tiara?
For me, it wasn't. Can you hear me? Can y'all hear me?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I know for me, I wasn't per se scared to leave, but it was just more so I just was trying to make my marriage work. Because, you know, he was into the church, he was a deacon in the church. So it's just like I never expect him to act like that. But I wasn't per se scared. I was just trying to honor my vows and still make it work. I was thankful that we didn't have kids together. And, you know, honestly, at the time, I was like, God, how could you take me through this? Da, 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 da. But then God said, you know what? I didn't tell you to marry him. So, you know, once I went through that, I was like, you know what, God, you're right. You're absolutely right. I did not come to you and ask you, is this the man that you have for me? And that's what I had to get through my head. But it was crazy.
Wow. That's even deep that you said, took that accountability and said, wait a minute, God, you didn't say this was who was for me. Because a lot of times, and these situations may not fall into this area, but in a lot of other situations, we can jump in certain waters, you know what I mean, that we shouldn't be in. And sometimes we have these feelings that we shouldn't be there, but our own wants and desires cause us to do it anyway. There are a whole lot of reasons that we get into those, but to understand that this was something that you asked for, and even though it wasn't right, you know, to pray about it and say, okay, well, God, I'm a wait. I'm a, you know, do what I have to do for my own betterment, but it's going to be following you. That's huge too. Lisa, in your experiences, the people that you know that have dealt with it, were they afraid to leave? And if they were afraid, did they ever tell you why they were afraid to leave?
So with my family member, she was afraid to leave because she felt like she had nowhere to go and her kids were young. She was also very isolated, which was the prerequisite or the beginning part of the abuse. He had made sure she was isolated from family, like her family members. She didn't really have friends. She was isolated from his family, like he would never really allow her to interact with them, that type of thing. So she felt like she was alone. I mean, for the most part, she really was. And her family, they felt like he was a good provider, which he was. But then knowing someone outwardly and living with a person, it are two different things, you know?
Yeah.
So there was definitely that. My friend in university, she was scared to leave because she was afraid of being alone, afraid of being single. She was the type of person who always had a man. Like, she was never ever single. Like, even when she'd go from like relationship to relationship, she'd meet 2 3 guys, while she was in a relationship. But yeah, she was afraid of being single. I think she was scared of him, like truly afraid of him as a person. um so that's the reason why I think she stayed. Maybe she didn't know how to get out of it. And a lot of the times too, like, people know that, well, she was in school too, right? So it's like, you don't really want to go through a breakup while you're in school, right? Because it's so emotionally taxing, right? To go through a breakup while you're in school, and you definitely don't want to fail. So that was definitely a contributing factor. For me personally, I feel like I came close to being in an abusive situation when I was 6 months pregnant. I walked away from my child's father. He had told me that his first child's mom, he would see her leaving to go with her boyfriend, and the kids wouldn't be taken care of. So when she came back, he'd beat her up. And I said, "What? What did you say?" And he always had that insecurity. He would always be in my ear saying, "Oh, people say you're better than me." And I said, "Why are you even listening to people? Like, I never said that to you. So why are you trying to make me feel like I told people that?" So I knew that mental manipulation, right? And the fact that he had told me that he had abused his first child's mom, I said, you are not going to do this. Plus, another thing is, my dad, I can say a lot of negative things about my dad, including he was abusive, physically, mentally, emotionally. But he always taught me to defend myself. And he always taught me that my will to survive should always be stronger than my love for another person. And I internalized that. If we ever went through breakups and stuff, he would always tell us, you need to get, buy, a nice dress, matching heels, and you go out and you get attention and stuff like that. Or, I mean, that kind of sounds toxic, but maybe the way I'm explaining it. But even though he was abusive, he never wanted us to get abused. And he would never stand for that. He was a protector. This is so strange. The like opposing qualities in a person.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew the signs because I saw it all around me. I knew the signs to look for, and I just it was too hard for me to swallow. I would walk away from any situation that if I felt like that person was going to even showing signs of it. Yeah, I learned to walk away. And the nurturing part of me, I don't know. It's hard to explain. I'm not that nurturing that I would nurture a person who would hurt me. Yeah. I'm not that nurturing.
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you guys' stories can strengthen a lot of women that are still dealing with situations. It'll help some before they even get in certain situations, but thank God you didn't deal with it, and you're here to tell them the stories that you've told. But TT, were you afraid to leave? And if so, what were you actually afraid of?
I was afraid of the repercussions. If you can have someone leave their home, because it wasn't your home, it was my home. So I've left my home. I've been in the cold. I've been thrown across rooms. I've been smacked, my hair pulled, dragged down the street. Like, what more are you capable of besides than what would he do to me when I say leave? I think I was more scared, but I felt like all the good things that were happening would make everything better, but it never did. But I couldn't tell him to go because what if he kicks my door in? What am I going to do? I can't call the police. They're not going to save me. So I was scared of the repercussions of sitting out.
Especially
It's hard to
being, especially being that he had done so much already and the police, didn't seem to want to do anything about it. So
Right.
yeah, I can definitely understand that fear. What about you, Cookie?
Cookies on me.
I think I had convinced myself that because everyone around me had convinced me that I was making these things up. And so it was a battle between what was actually happening and what the people around me were telling me. Even my family, some of them didn't believe the stuff that I was going through. So a lot of it was the reason why I stayed was because I felt like maybe I was exaggerating, or maybe I was delusional, I guess. And I don't think I recently like really just started talking about how bad it was. Like the people who were close to me, I would tell them, but I think they finally like really understood and believed me recently. So I think the reason why I stayed because I felt like, well, first I felt like I was a teen mom and nobody was going to want me. That was one. And then two, because everyone else around me was like, he's a good Christian man. You shouldn't let this man go. And don't let, your mental, whatever you're going through mentally allow you to lose a good man. And I believed that for a while until things just got to the point where I'm like, okay, you guys, I know you guys don't see it, but this is some wild stuff going on at home. So that eventually I had to leave. Like, I think the kind of straw that broke the camel's back for me was my husband bought me an STD. Luckily, it was something that some medication can cure, but it was like, okay, that's enough. We've done the abuse, we've done the mental, emotional abuse. I moved out and he was showing up at my house, like being crazy and stuff. And even now to this day, he still, if he sees me out, he won't leave me alone. So it's wild. And we've been divorced for years and years and years. So we were divorced in 2008. So yeah, it took some time, but I felt like a lot of that that situation definitely made me go get therapy so that I could move forward in life. Because if I hadn't gone to get therapy, I don't know where I would be right now.
And so were you saying that even though you guys divorced in 2008, he still tries to contact you and be a part of your life and everything? Is that what you said?
Oh, to this day. Mm-hmm. I had to embarrass him. I had to put it out there publicly what I was going through with him. Like I would go out with my friends and then he would just show up. I don't know if he knew I was there or if someone told him I was there, but he would be there and then he'd be trying to buy me drinks and act like we're friends. And I'm like, we don't even speak outside, unless it's an emergency with my kids, I don't talk to this man. I don't speak to him. I try not to have any conversations with him at all. I feel like that was the worst punishment for him, because being friendly to him, he would be abusive emotionally and mentally. And so for me to protect myself, I had to be like, no contact at all, unless there's an emergency with the kids. And that had helped. It helped me tremendously. But if he saw me out with I'd be out there having a good time dancing. And next thing I know, he's standing there with a drink talking about, I bought you a drink. My ex-boyfriend, who was 6'10", used to have to stand in between us at the club and be like, dude, leave her alone. That happened for 5 years and he still wouldn't listen.
Wow. Did he have, I mean, that you know of, did he have any kind of mental issues?
Oh, I know for a fact he's got mental issues. It's just that he knows and I hate that people use this phrase so loosely, but like, he is a straight up narcissist. Like a straight up narcissist. He is the textbook of what a narcissist is. And so, you think he's a really good guy, but once you get him behind closed doors and you really start talking to him, you recognize all of these other things about him. And even my daughters, they're older. One is just turned 22. The other one is 18. They see it. And so they recognize it, and they're like, I just need to, I keep telling them not to internalize it. Like, don't blame yourself for the way he behaves, because he's going to turn whatever situation, whatever you're talking about, it's going to be spotlight on him, no matter what it is. I mean, going to a college trip should have been a place to celebrate for my daughter. Ended up being an argument between the two of them about her, having panic attacks when she goes out publicly. And so my oldest daughter had to jump on the phone and try to calm the situation back down. But it's like, I'm glad that they have each other, because I didn't have that. I was isolated. The isolation. Ooh, when they try to isolate you, that's a red flag. When you're in a relationship with somebody and they don't like your friends, they don't like your family, they don't want you hanging out with your coworkers, all of that stuff right there is ground to run fast, hard, and don't look back.
That's great advice. Great advice. What about you, Datria? Were you afraid to leave?
I feel like, just speaking, on behalf of my mom, I never did really find out why, but I feel like it was just fear. And two, well, all I know just growing up, that she loved her husband and that she loved being married. She loved herself some David. And so she prayed for years for him even come back. They did come back and they got back together. He didn't physically abuse her, but he was still verbally abusing her behind closed doors. In front of us, he would be very nice, and everything. But I did confront my dad when he came back, because he came back and actually got off drugs and everything and came back and lived with me for a while. And I didn't realize I had some resentment in my heart towards him until one day I had to just let it out, because I felt I hated how he treated my mom, and then left us because he was the provider. And then, she had to get on food stamps and welfare. And then we're living with my grandmother in one bedroom, me and my mom and my 4 sisters. So the 2 older girls sleeping on a pallet, which myself and my other sisters sleeping on a pallet on the floor. And then, my 2 younger sisters in the bed with my mom, and just the way we lived. And then living in the home, my grandfather, he was like psycho, but he was just and my grandmother, she just tolerated. But I feel like women maybe just didn't know truly who they were. I feel like you need to really know who you are to be able to keep your sanity. And even in spite of the abuse and the verbal abuse, just know who you are and to walk in who you are. But they just accepted certain behaviors, because I know them. And it's not just men too, because I've been reading up about this. It's a lot of men, not just women. Men, a lot of men are being abused as well. But I think my father had a lot of issues that he didn't deal with, that he needed therapy, because he grew up without my grandfather, which my grandfather when I talked to my dad's mom, she said he abused her, which she left, and she got out of it. My dad's mother, he actually was about to choke her one night, and then he ended up, and thank God she left him. He ended up killing his aunt and uncle who raised him. He killed them and chopped them with an axe, like killed them. And I didn't even realize that when my dad used to go visit my grandfather, that we was going to prison to visit him when I was a child. We would go to Columbia. I got a relationship with him, had a relationship later when he got out of prison, but I didn't find out because it was just something, we just kept everything as a secret. You know, we just didn't talk about what was really happening. So I was visiting my grandfather in prison, and I just thought he was, I don't even know what I thought when I was little. You know, they just didn't talk about things. But I think my mom just kind of felt sorry for him, because I feel like when you abuse people, you really don't love yourself, and you just need healing yourself. So, but I feel like, and just knowing that you can make it alone, and there's life past that. But my mom decided, because I decided not to say anymore, that she took him back. And, you know, they were still back together later on. I thought when he came back, he was going to be able to give me away for my wedding, but I wasn't sure if he was going to make it. So my uncle, who was like a fill-in father, actually gave me away and helped me. He was a father figure for me. But anyway, I confronted my dad and told him how I felt, and that was like a breakthrough for me. And I just cried, but I still, you know, loved him. And then we had a great relationship, you know, before he passed away. So
that's great. I'm glad that relationship was strong before he left, because I know you've said how much you love him.
Yes.
In spite of.
And he made it up. I think he made up for it because he wanted to make up for it with his grandchildren. He knew he failed us as a father, because he had so many dreams and goals for us, but it just didn't go through. The alcoholism just took over. And then later on, you know, when he got on drugs, I don't really know exactly what type of drugs. They said he was probably on crack or something in Philadelphia. He was living a different life, but then he was, whenever all the warrants and everything went away, he moved back here down south, and him and my mom got back together, and they were just like living happily ever after, even though, you know, he was still verbally abusing her. But I just don't understand it. But, you know.
Yeah, well, this next question, and I'm gonna start with TT. But now this question may sound crazy, it may sound stupid, but the reason I'm asking it is because I think it's very important that people not only hear stories, but understand the feelings that go into some of these situations. That way, maybe before they can feel some of these things that you guys explain, and they say, "Oh, wait a minute, that's a red flag." So, how did it make you feel when you were being abused? Take us through some of those emotions.
I think it brought me to my lowest points. Like, what did I do? Like, where does this come from? I had mixed feelings. Basically, like, I was hurt, but then I was more like, the more that it happened, I felt like I was more torn, where my feelings went numb after a while. It didn't faze me. It didn't, I wasn't bothered by it after a while, because I felt like, okay, if he's putting his hands on me, it's not like he really loves me, but he's here. So helping me do certain things, and I thought maybe that was love. So, but it was painful love.
So did you I think you did say at the beginning that you were at a point where you thought that was the way you were supposed to be treated, right? You thought love equaled being abused.
Right. So I know I have a smart mouth. I do have a smart mouth and I do defend myself. And I think a lot of times that when you argue back with that person, it makes them more madder because you're sticking up for yourself. So if I'm telling you, don't put your hands on me, you can get the out of my house, and you feel a certain way about it, it's going to make the issue more worser and worser. So the more I would defend myself, the more you're putting yourself deeper and deeper into a hole where you're making him even madder and madder because he wants you to shut up. He doesn't want you to defend yourself. Who, you know what I mean? Like, you're not allowed to defend yourself. You're going to put up with what I'm giving to you, and you're going to allow it. So as long as I was allowing it, of course, he's going to keep doing it. But then more I try to defend myself, I think it made him madder where it was putting more aggressiveness towards me. So it kept getting worse than getting better. So I just decided you don't talk about it. I don't talk about it to my friends. I don't talk about it to his mom. I don't talk about it to his family. And as long as I keep it behind closed doors, it's not anybody's business. And if I go outside with some of my hair missing or a black eye or the hole in my head, you figure out a way to say something happened without him in it.
And I know there are so many people that dealing with that too. Lisa, did any of the people that you know explain to you exactly how they were feeling emotionally when this was going on?
I would see them cry. Like my family member, I would see her cry, and she would talk about, like, I grew up sheltered, but at the same time, I was told a lot of things that maybe in retrospect, a child had no business knowing that. So the things that my reasoning and the way that I thought things should go were different from like the average kid, because my family member, she would tell us, like from start to finish, and I knew the reasons why she stayed, and I always asked her, like, why don't you leave? But at that time, I didn't know you couldn't tell somebody to just leave, right? Like that part, I was too young to understand that dynamic of in the abusive situation. But I knew she felt hurt because I would see her cry. I knew she was dependent on him. I could see the alienation, and I knew his background. Like his mom had left him when he was 3 months old, and he grew up with extended family. And she's only ever visited him twice, like from overseas. So he had a lot of abandonment issues, and I guess he was afraid of being up because he was abandoned as a kid. He grew up in poverty and like a whole bunch of struggles and stuff. He was afraid of her leaving, abandonment issues where you hold the people that are close to you too close, like you literally cut off their circulation. Like I felt like that was what was happening. With my friend, she was afraid to leave because she was like fear of repercussion. That definitely was a huge aspect, and just not knowing how to live without the person, because she was I don't want to say a kept wife, but for lack of a better way of putting it, like, yeah.
Yeah, I can totally understand what you're saying. Cookie, how did you feel while you were being abused?
It was devastating because I still had to raise these two children. I still had to go to work every day. Um, I still had to go to church and pretend everything was okay. Um, I remember one day at work, I had a really bad panic attack. And like it was my first time having I didn't know what was going on. I just remember just being disoriented and screaming because I didn't know what was going on. But it really does mess with your mental because that's it causes PTSD. It causes all kinds of stuff. Blood pressure was crazy. I was losing weight. I had lost so much weight. Like I said before, I'm 6'3". I had gotten down to like 150 pounds, which is super skinny for a tall person. And so, and that wasn't normal for me. So yeah, I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping. I didn't feel safe. It was a horrible time in my life. I remember my oldest daughter, who was probably 4 or 5 at the time, would try to comfort me. I remember her like coming over and like hugging me at times to try to comfort me. And it was sad. It was a really sad time in my life. Really sad.
How about you, Deidre?
I feel like I saw my mom go through depression. She went through a lot of depression, but she was isolated a lot too because she would always get, my father was very jealous of her, which my mom was just so beautiful, and that's why even when he tried to burn her hair, I think that was to try to hurt her, to burn her hair out. And but just depressed and isolation. I saw my mother just have the blinds closed. She did talk about it to family, but not to anybody else. And even me, as an adult, I want to make sure when I wake up, I open my blinds. That's because I want to have my blinds open, even light a candle all day to set the atmosphere to not live like that and to be depressed and isolated. But I think depression and isolation and feelings of hopelessness, just just hopeless.
TT, I'm not sure if you spoke on this yet, but the bout with abuse that you were just speaking to us about, outside of, because I know you said it started when you were younger. So I was gonna ask if this was your first relationship that ever had abuse. I know you said you were abused before, but as far as relationships go, was this the first?
No, it wasn't my first one. My first one, I remember he hit me in the back of the head with a high heel shoe, and the heel went inside my head, and it caused me to black out. And I remember blacking out and waking up in the mental hospital the next day. When I woke up, that's where I was at. I wasn't in a hospital, I was in a mental hospital. So they said that I was crazy, and the hole in my head, he didn't get in trouble for it. It made me, they said I went delusional. Like I was walking around after it happened where I had got hit. So I was delusional, and I was trying to open a building that belongs to the state. I was trying to get in there to get help, and they ended up taking me to the hospital. So that's how I got to the mental hospital. They sent me to a mental hospital because they really thought that I was lying about what happened to my head. And a boy had got mad at me because I wanted to go home. And I was about 16 at the time, and I just wanted to go home. And I didn't want to hang out, and I didn't want to drink, and I didn't want to do anything because I wasn't like that when I was younger. I wasn't a drinker when I was younger, smoking weed or nothing. I liked to hang out though. But he didn't approve of me wanting to go home. So when I went to go turn around and walk out the door, boop, I got hit at the top of my head with it. And it went in pretty deep. And then I had an incident, a couple of them. I think I jumped back to relationships, and they've all been domestic, except for with my husband. Like, I've never witnessed a relationship that was a peaceful, no hands on, no, like if it was a yelling, it was a disagreement. It wasn't a yelling, a fighting. So I think I'm 48 now, so, and I started dating when I was like 16, so I've only had one real relationship that's never been domestic violence related, if that makes sense. So all my other ones have been. Even if it was for a month or a year we dated, it was a domestic violence relationship, and I was used to it. I felt like that's what I was supposed to. He's gonna love me if I let him smack me. Hey, you know what I mean? He loves me, so that's how I felt growing up. I didn't have someone to say. I didn't have my mom get to hug me and say, you know, you need love. This is how you're loved. Or I didn't get to see, like, I saw my foster parents. They were loving. They were always together. But when I got detached from that, I never seen another family. Like, you know how you can see your friends and you'd be like, oh, I like going to their house because their mom and dads are so cool and they're together, and I want to be like their grandma and grandpa. So I never like got to witness those type of relationships unless it was on TV. So do you know what I mean? So it's not like somebody was, I didn't get a memo. I didn't get someone to be like, hey, you know, that's a red flag right there. You're not, you know, why are you doing that? Or, you know what I mean? Or you shouldn't be with that person. But I used to tell myself, like, you can't tell me who I can be with if you're not comfortable in your own skin, or don't worry about my relationship or what he does to me. So that's why I always kept my domestic violence relationships to myself unless they noticed it themselves and would ask me. But a lot of times I think people wouldn't believe me or think that's how aggressive they are behind doors, because in person they're lovable, they're laughing, they're giggling. Oh, look, you know, look what I got her today, or we're going to do this, and oh, it's just a happy picture. But then we get home and it's like, now it's on. You know what I mean? You said that slick thing when you were drinking your cup in front of your friends. Woo, take that. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? Or you're in the shower. I remember being with one of my kids' fathers, and I wanted to go to a concert, and it was already planned. He knew about it. He didn't like, he didn't say anything about it until the day it came. And I had a babysitter, and the agreement was that as long as I got my daughter ready for the babysitter, bath and everything, he was still going to stay there. So he really didn't have a problem with it. But at the time being, I'm in the bathroom giving her a bath, and I have a scar across my head right here, from here to here, where he smashed my head into the side of the tub. So, like, I had to pick up my baby out of bloody water and scream, like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Now you're not going to the concert because now look at you. You know what I mean? Look at your head. And my friend was like, girl, we got these tickets. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to, like, because I think I cried more about telling my stories than I cried when it was happening. So if you smack me, it was funny. You know what I mean? Like, I wasn't thinking, oh my God, oh, I'm going to cry, because then he's going to see me weaker than I already am at this point. So I tell myself that I'm strong. Like, I won't, a lot of my domestic violence, my kids didn't see it. I didn't allow to see that. I didn't want them to see it. I have 2 daughters. I don't want my kids thinking that that's okay, because I had to find out myself that it wasn't okay. I didn't have somebody saying, hey, Teresa, that's a red flag. You know what I mean? Or, hey, let me talk to you and tell you that we think this is what's going on. They'd be like, hey, well, Sue, if he's paying your bills, girl, you got it made. You know what I mean? So it's not like I didn't have someone to say that. So I think my daughters think I'm hard on them because I'm like that with them. If they have a man and they put their hands on it, I'm the first one. First one there before the police. You know what I mean? Like, no, I don't think it's okay. I didn't condone it, but I condoned it for myself because I allowed it to happen. As long as I allow it to happen, it continued to happen. but I also didn't know how to get out of that. Even though everybody says just leave, everybody can't say leave. It's not that easy. It really isn't that easy, because you can get a knock at the door and, hey, he could bring you your favorite perfume or your favorite or something you seen in the window weeks ago and you know you couldn't get, but he got it. Or, you know what I mean? Or that sweet talk, hey, I didn't mean it. Not, you know, it's going to be good this time. You know what I mean? So nobody ever sees that side of what we go through, or why we stay with that person, or why we keep going back. Is because we think, oh, okay, he just said something so loving to me. He loves me again. Do you know what I mean? And then, boom, it's just a cycle. And it's hard to get out of. I'm not going to say that it's easy. And I'm not going to tell people that, you know, just run all the time, because sometimes you can't do that. There's not. I've had boyfriends that kick in my door and will be at this front of my house, kicking in my door like it's nothing. Go buy a new one, but you're gonna take this ass open. You know what I mean? Oh, I'm sorry.
You're fine.
But I mean, that's what all I've known. You know what I mean? I can't go and call my mom and say, hey, you know, if a man does this or that, what do I do? Or, you know, this person did something, and then give me that. Hey, you know, you don't need this. You know what I mean? You can go this direction. I didn't have that. And as a father figure, my dad was always in and out of jail. So my love came from letters. You know what I mean? They didn't come from, like, this might sound funny or weird to say on here, but like, I didn't tell my real mother about me having my menstrual. I went and I told my dad about it while he was in prison. I didn't have a bond with my mom, and I can't say I really had a bond with my dad, but I can say that I had a stronger bond with my dad than I do my natural mother. And it was only because it was through jail mail. Do you know what I'm saying? So my dad taught me things through jail letters. Like, I could tell him, you know, this boy just pulled my hair, and, you know, I got a bloody nose, he busted my mouth or whatever. His, of course, all dads, when I get out, I'm like, you know what I mean? But Dad, you're not getting out for another 10 years. By then I'll be married on with sex. Do you know what I mean? With kids on then. I need support now. So I didn't have a brother or a dad or a mom. I just felt like, this man loves me. Go ahead, smack me. I know where I'm at. I know he's gonna come home. I know there's another day. But then there's times after you get into those type of situations. I think the worst one that I was in was when I was getting beat up. It was more like it was a pattern every 2 to 3 days a week. So it was normal to me. Do you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, well, you know, today's Wednesday. Today I'll probably get smacked around. You know what I mean? So let me get ready for it. So I would always build myself up to get ready, because I knew it was going to happen. So once you get yourself ready for it, you don't feel that. You don't feel the hits. You don't feel the pain. And then after a while, you just go numb. So I felt like after so much of it, I'm just numb to it. So it doesn't affect me like it does now that I talk about it, that I'm older. But before, it's not like it's a numb feeling that people get, well, that I got. So, yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. Sorry.
No, you're fine. You're fine. This next question, I'm gonna start with Cookie. How long was it, if you can remember, how long was it into the relationship before the abuse started?
It was subtle abuse at first. It was things that that should have been a red flag for me, but I had never experienced that before. You know, I was raised with my dad, so he was very loving. And so when I experienced this, I was like, this is weird, but I wasn't sure. I was very unsure of what was happening. And then I would describe it to other people and they would be confused, like, nah, this is not that person. I think the biggest thing that I can remember happened within like the first 3 or 4 months. He had told me he was going out for Halloween with his friends. And so I was like, okay, well, me and my friends are going to go out for Halloween too. Cause you know, you gonna be out. I'm gonna be out. You know, I'll see you afterwards. And then he started questioning me about going out. And I was like, but aren't you going out? And we were young. We were like in our early 20s at the time, 21, 22, something like that. And he just made a huge deal out of it. I was like, well, fine, I won't go. No, my friends, I told my friends what was happening. They were like, no, girl, you need to go. And so I was going to go anyway. And then he kind of backed off once I told him, like, hey, I don't like the way you're behaving. And, but it progressed from there. It definitely started with like emotional abuse before the physical stuff started. But they definitely hook you in with, I don't know. I don't know how to describe that. Now that you said that, it was strange. Like looking back at that, it's definitely strange.
That manipulation. I've heard that most abusers are master manipulators.
Absolutely. And he would use the church a lot of times to make me feel bad about things. And then I'd be like, but you are doing the same exact thing. Like, how are you going to judge me about something and call me unchristian like, and yet you doing the same and worse? So yeah, it was definitely in the beginning. Yeah.
Now, we have King P with a question right here. TT, I'm gonna let you answer this question, and then after that, I have a question for Datria.
Okay.
Can you see it?
Is it where it's saying, are you ladies now doing better in recognizing the signs of the potential abuser? I think that I'm doing better now. Myself personally, I'm not in a domestic violence relationship. I look for the warnings out. I look for certain things now. It might take me a minute, but I have stood up for myself more than I have in any other relationships. And I found my voice because I don't think I had my own voice then. I think I let my abusers not only control me, but they had my voice too on top of controlment. So now I feel like I have my own voice. But I think I'm doing better now, and I'm still trying. It's not like I'm jumping into a relationship tomorrow, but I'm trying.
That's all you can do. It starts with that first step.
Right.
No race is won from start and then you automatically get to the finish line. There's a lot in between there. So you're doing a good job. Just keep pressing forward. Datria. First, let me ask you, if you may not know the answer to this, but when it comes to your mother, how long was it before the abuse started when she was in a relationship with your father?
Okay. From what I know, it actually started before they were married.
Okay.
So they got married in 1970. So I was 2 years old. And so from what I've heard, and most of the time you can see the signs beforehand, but you just don't. And just from talking to a lot of women as well, we just tend to ignore. I'm saying we too, because I me myself included, we just ignore those signs. You know, we always, there's always red flags. There are red flags.
Yeah.
I believe it happened even before she got married, but she just loved my dad so much and just liked the idea of being married. She wanted to be married. You know, she had a 2-year-old daughter, which was me, and she, you know, so she felt like she didn't want to live in sin, so she believed in wanting to do right. And so, but she truly did love my dad. Like all she talks about, and to this day, she still talks about her David. She loves my dad so much. So she just does. So
I think that's important to hear too, because I think that probably goes on a lot with peer pressure, family pressure, religion. I'm sure there are a lot of things to where even though things don't feel good, that a person, there are these other things that's holding them in these situations. They like, okay, it's bigger than me. You know,
Yes.
I know I'm dealing with this, but how is the church going to look at it? Or how is my family that loves this person? How are they going to look at it? Or is anyone going to blame me? There has to be so much that's going through, you know, the abused mind when that stuff is going on.
Yes, and just feeling for the person who's the abuser, just wanting them to be healed. You know, like you're looking past all of the bad and and seeing the good.
Mm,
I think that's probably because we did have some good times, but you know there were a lot of bad times.
yeah.
You know, we did have some good times.
Now, Lisa, from what you've heard from those around you, how long was the totality of the relationship that the person was in with the abuser?
My friend from school, I can't remember how long they were together, but she's always, been in long relationships. So I would say they worked together for at least 7 years, from what I can remember. I know it's over 7, but I can't remember exact amount of years. Now, my female family member, wow, she was with him over 20 years. Over 20 years for sure. The abuse, the abuse started like the verbal part, I think took up a lot of it, but the physical part didn't start until she was in her 20s, I would say, because she was with him from she was a teenager. Um, yeah, over 20 years. Over 20 years, yeah.
That's a long time.
Mhm.
Which
It is.
it may not sound like it, but when you're being abused, 20 minutes is a long time. But much less 20 years. Cookie, how long were you in your relationship where there was abuse?
Well, I've been in multiple relationships that have been abusive, but that one was from like 7 years, 6 or 7 years off and on.
Hmm. What about you, TT?
Mine was off and on with the situation that I was talking about for 2 years. But it
Okay.
started emotionally, I want to say, and like mental pokes and emotional pokes started. Maybe the red flags you're supposed to look for that you
Mhm.
didn't call red flags back then. But maybe within the first 3 months after it's like a time period. It went like 60 days, 90 days, and the next thing, boom, you can't go outside with that on. And I think I look cute. Well, you don't, or you can take that up. It's too short. You're showing too much. So we're at a point where, like, I went, you have my kids will tell you that I tell them, like, no open shirts like that. No, booty hanging out of your shorts and things like that. Not that that's what I was doing and showing when I was there, but even if you wore a tank top like she has on right now, she's showing too much. You have to take that off, Cookie. You know what I mean? So it's like it's leveled down too far, or her stomach showing, or you got too much neck showing. So it was just the little things that started coming and doing the poking to where you might as well go outside in turtlenecks in the summer because that shirt you have on. I don't care if you bought it before I met you, and even if you bought it when I met you, you can rip it up because you're not wearing it. You know what I mean? So it was a little stuff that started like 3 months later down the line. Summer came and you're not wearing that outside. And I'm like, I bought this way before you. And you know what I mean? And the tank tops had to be a little bit higher. And, so it's just like, it's just weird to me, but okay, I'm going to do it for you. You know what I mean? So it's like, And nobody, like I said, nobody told me, hey, that's a red flag right there. Everybody's telling you what's weird because they weren't called red flags to me when I was 16. You know what I mean? So 17 or 21 or any of that. Nobody was pointing those out. I just felt like he wanted me to look different. So let me fix it. Maybe I'm showing too much. But then you see all your friends with the same things hop on and you're like, what am I showing? Because she has one on. You know what I mean? But then they're quick to be like, oh, look at that girl right there. Look at her booty hanging out. And oh, she's so cute. But if you have the same matching outfit at home and you wear it, you're a whore. You're sleeping with somebody. You're wearing that to impress somebody. It was to the point where like I would wear earrings and do my hair to a point like half the time I don't even do it anymore for years now because it was like, well, what are you going outside with your hair done for? Who are you going to meet? Why do you have earrings then? That's a new outfit, even though it was in your closet for 6 months. You just bought that yesterday, and you'd be like, no, you know what I mean? So it's just like, it's mind draining. They drain you in certain different ways slowly.
It sounds like a very controlling situation too. Like they always have to have control, like they're trying to control you. And you kind of, when you talked about those flags, you went into what my next question was. So I'm gonna add a little spice to it. But not only did you see the signs when you were dating, and we'll start with Datria on this. Were the signs saw in the dating process? And when you ladies answer, if you did see the signs, what caused you to, I guess, push those signs to the side and continue with the relationship? And I'm talking about right at the cusp of the abuse, not quite when it started, but those signs that you see before it started.
It was more, I didn't see them. I didn't really notice them. Maybe I did see them, but I didn't notice them. They was just natural to me. Like everybody has their own way. So like if he yelled or screamed a certain way, it was just okay, well, he's just, you know what I mean? Like he's having a bad day, so what? But then the abuse follows behind it. I don't know where to take it. I didn't know where to or how to. So I don't know a time like where I can even say I felt okay to.
Yeah. What about you?
I could see the signs, but I couldn't stop the signs that I was seeing because I didn't know they were real signs. Yeah. To me, do you know what I mean? Like now, it's like if me and my friends are talking, they'll be like, "Oh my god, that was a red sign." But back then, you're like, "Oh, he just told me to change my clothes." You're not thinking nothing of it.
It kind of
you're
looks
just
like
going and doing what they're asking.
Mm-hmm. How about you, Datria?
You're trying to make that person happy because you're happy with the person, so you want to make them happy. So whatever they're asking you to do, whether it was shave your eyelids off, and your eyebrows off, you were going to do it because you loved him and you thought that's what was going to make him love you.
How about you, Datria?
I feel like, the signs are there because most abusers are very critical. And like you were saying, they're very controlling. You really just can't do anything. Right? Sometimes you just be quiet, but unless you really know who you are and know that the things that they're saying is not true, you can live and function and build to live a life, a fulfilled life, an abundant life, without those criticisms. But like you were saying, just the little things, just how you might wear your hair or have on makeup, or someone else can do that and it's okay. You get criticized for wanting to F that person or do this, or just anything, so.
You smiled a little bit too much to that person, or you hugged them a little bit too long, or you were in the bathroom a little bit longer than you were supposed to be, but there's no like hidden phones or anything in there. So what are you in there doing? You know what I mean? So it's like the little things that you don't really think about that snap right away. And then you figure it out. Like, why did he ask me that? Why are you pointing this out? Why am I hugging this person so long? Or why did I have a longer conversation with this person than I did with this person? And they get agitated with that. They don't want you talking to somebody else. They don't know what you're going to tell them or what you're going to say to them. You might be telling them what that person did to you or does to you. They don't want you around another person to tell what's going on. So they control that.
And like Cookie was saying, narcissists, if you look up that and just look at all the behaviors, most of the time abusers have all of those characteristics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And this next question, I want to start with Cookie, and then we'll go to Lisa, then Datria, and then TT. Has the abuse that you dealt with affected your relationships after?
Absolutely. But it affected me in a way of, like, in my first relationship, I would stand toe to toe with him. After that, I found myself avoiding conflict. If I felt like a conversation we couldn't talk it out, I would avoid it. If I felt like they were going to be angry, I would just avoid it, just to try to stay away from anything that would cause an argument or a fight or anything like that. I wanted peace in my life, and I realized that sometimes, you have to pick and choose your battles. And I was definitely finding ways to get away from any battle that might have turned into anything domestic.
How about you, Lisa? Your associates, did it affect their relationships after they got out of the domestic violence relationships?
So experiencing this domestic violence secondhand, I feel like I became hypersensitive, and I would always, if I was in a situation and it didn't feel good, I didn't feel safe, I felt like they were too controlling, I was gone. So I spent more of my time being, like, my adult life, being single than being in relationships. And I just absolutely refuse to accept this role of nurturer. Like, I'm not the type of person, who's gonna nurture somebody who isn't giving to me. And I place a lot of emphasis on reciprocity, because I have a lot of male friends. I have 4 sisters, but all my friends have always been male. And also I got, like, advice from them, and they would always tell me, this is a good element, this is not a good element. And I think having all sisters put me at a disadvantage. So that's, that led to me being, like I said, hypersensitive. Like, my radar was on overdrive. And that's why I left my child's father when I was 6 months pregnant, because I was like, no, you're not going to do this to me. You're not going to do this to me. And like I said, my dad instilled this fight in me. So I would rather fight. And I'm defensive, I guess, too. Like, even, I shouldn't even say in a work situation, but I always felt like I have to protect myself. I always feel like I gotta protect myself, and I don't care how anyone else feels about it. I have to protect myself. I have to protect my child. I said, there's no way my child is gonna grow up seeing that stuff. And I wanted my family members to see that I learned something from them. Like, I saw them going through it, so I'm going to not go through it.
Yeah, that
Um,
makes sense. I can understand that.
but definitely I'm defensive. Like I'm ready to fight if you try to put me in any kind of unsafe situation. At work, I'd rather take a ride up than do something that I feel is unsafe. Yeah.
How about you, Datria?
Okay. On behalf of my mom, that was the only man my mom had ever been with. So she didn't have any other relationships outside of that. But just from what I've experienced with other people, sometimes it can affect the other relationships.
Mm-hmm. Did you already answer, TT?
Yeah, because
No. I'm very defensive now of anything. I mean, when I'm my thing is now is even if you go like this, it's like, all right, time to get out. Because I don't know if you're gonna swing or hit, but now my reactions are like, okay, you're gonna yell, you have to get out. If we can't talk, there's nothing. So I think it made me more aware, more defensive. I stick up for myself now. Before I felt like I couldn't. I would let you do whatever, walk all over me, whatever. And now I'm like, don't be calling me a, you know, do you talk to your mother like that? Like some of them make me have to question that. Like, do you speak to your mom like that? Do you speak to around your mother like that? Would you talk to me like that in front of your mom? So I just feel like now I have to be on defensive mode. I don't need a relationship with someone I feel like I get to put your hands on me for me to feel like I'm loved. So guess what? I don't need to be in that relationship with you. If we have to argue, yell, or anything, it's time for them to go.
Any kind of attributes from that past life, you definitely have to check it at the door and snip it right then. Now, this question is: did at any point did the abuser blame you for the abuse?
Yeah, they'll ask you, well, what did you say to him? Why did you make him mad? If you're the only two in there and he's putting hands on you on something you did? So what did you say to him? So that was my biggest thing. What did you say to him? What did you do to him? And I'd be like, nothing. I've been home all day with my kids. You know, like he came in the house and he was already in a bad mood. And you could say, hi, do you want something to eat? And then it'd be, don't effing talk to me. I'm not talking to you. Was I even speaking to you? So then when you mention it to somebody, well, what'd you say to him? I asked him, did he eat? Would he like to eat? If that's wrong, then I don't know what is. What's right? You know what I mean? So I think that was my biggest thing.
Now, did you deal with that as well, Cookie?
They definitely took out his frustrations on me, mostly verbally and mentally. I realized that he was very insecure, and so he used to tell me, nobody's gonna want you, and you're never gonna find anybody better than me, and they're all gonna think you're crazy. You're crazy. I mean, he would just say all kinds of wild things to try to tear my self-esteem down. He succeeded for a while. He did. They definitely picked on, like he couldn't keep a job. He would go to work for 2 days and quit. I don't know what was going on, but he could not keep a job for anything. And I was always one that kept a job and I always had money. So I never depended on them financially, but his insecurity was real. And even to this day, he doesn't keep a job. He doesn't, nothing has changed with that.
Now, this question, I'm going to stay with you, Cookie. I want you to answer first, then Datria, then Lisa, then TT. Because we just talked about whether the abuser blamed you, but did you ever blame yourself for the abuse?
I blame myself for allowing it, because I could have easily walked away. So in that moment, I didn't feel like I don't know. I felt like maybe this was normal and that I wasn't going to get anything better than this. I let myself get broken down so low that I thought that this was going to be my life. Like, this is how every relationship I come across is going to be. So, yeah, I blame myself now for it, because I feel like I could have done better for myself, which is why I'll never allow myself to get in that situation again.
How about you, Deidre? Did you have those conversations with your mother? Did she blame herself?
I feel like my dad probably manipulated her in some ways to make her think that it was her fault in some situations. But again, I feel like she did not see a healthy relationship growing up herself, with my grandfather verbally abusing my grandmother. And that's just something that she accepted. She just accepted it, and always tried, to be the peacemaker, and to, just be quiet and try to do everything to make my dad happy.
Mm.
It was probably nothing that she could do. Nothing was good enough.
Do you feel that it sort of went that way as well, Lisa?
Can you repeat the question again?
Did you blame yourself for the abuse, or did your associates blame themselves?
For my friend, I'm not really sure she blamed herself, to be honest. I think we talked about her getting out of it, and I spent a lot of time, like years, getting her, okay enough to leave, like fully leave and cut off contact. So I don't think I can honestly answer that question if she blamed herself or not.
Mm-hmm.
For my female family member, I think she accepted it because he was a provider and he was highly regarded. That's another thing that makes it really, really hard, because it's almost, you feel hopeless because you feel like no one's going to support you because the abuser is held in such high regard. And people are going to say, you're exaggerating, or, just go back home, or so work it out. So a lot of people accept it because of that, because they know they won't have support. And I think that was the case with my family member. She just accepted it because she felt like she wasn't going to get supported. And yeah, even her own dad, held him in high regards. And other, her siblings held him in high regards. And it was also the type of thing where, no one is the full package. So if they're a provider, maybe you can look the other way. They send your kids to school, maybe you should look the other way, because a bird in the hand is worth two in the bush. What's in front of you, but if you leave, you don't know what you're gonna be having to go up against. That type of thing. And also, well, I don't think she believed it, but I definitely know that there's a belief out there that if someone's beating you, that they love you.
Mm-hmm.
That jealousy is okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get what you're saying. It's unfortunate that sometimes we tell ourselves that certain things that aren't good for us are the way it's supposed to be, and things like that. But situations cause us to do that. Now, TT, did you blame yourself for what you were going through?
I didn't blame myself at the time, but I blame myself now, because I put myself in that predicament, into that situation, and allowed it to happen for so long, to the point where now I have anxiety, I have depression. I isolate myself. I don't go outside. I don't go and have fun with my friends or call my friends and say, hey, let's go out tonight. And they don't call me because they know I'm not coming. So I never put myself in that at that time. Like, is this my fault? Am I gonna blame myself because he split my head open with a hammer because he was mad? I couldn't blame myself. I was blaming him. But now that I got older and I see that I have kids, I blame myself because I stood in that predicament. I stood in that environment first and allowed it to happen. So I blame myself. I could have did better. I know I could have, you know, found a different, atmosphere and probably a man or whatever, but I chose that predicament and I allowed it to happen. So at the time I didn't blame myself, but now I do. But the only thing I don't blame is the kids that I brought in with him, that I had with him. I would never take that back. Yeah. But I do blame myself for, looking back at stuff now, like, I wouldn't have this different forgetting stuff and remembering things. If I wasn't with him, I wouldn't have had that hammer in my head, right? But I allowed myself to happen. So I blame myself. Now I wouldn't be in this predicament with headaches and anxiety and worrying if I'm going to wake up in the morning, because I blame myself now. I put myself in that predicament. But I didn't blame myself when it was happening. I put myself in a predicament that I thought someone loved me or wanted to be with me and things like that. So at the time, I don't think of it being I was blaming, or I could blame myself then. But I do now. When I look at stuff, I blame myself now. So I think that's why it's so, it feels like it's like a Band-Aid and you rip it off. Mm-hmm. Or you get your stitches pulled out and now it's bringing those fresh memories up to you because you're blaming yourself. So I'm going through that blame game now that I'm older than I did when I was younger. So I think that gives me more anxiety and more depression. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah, that I'm to blame for this. You know what I mean? I'm to blame for the headaches and stuff like that because I left myself there. So yeah, I blame myself now. And even if people tell me like you shouldn't blame yourself, he could have did this, or I still blame myself because first I know what I put myself into. I know the predicament that I was in and it allowed it to happen for so long. So I do blame myself. I blame myself for having anxiety now and and I'm confused and sometimes I forget things and I don't remember what I'm doing and I have headaches or I don't want to get up and I'm so depressed. You know what I mean? So it's like I blame myself now, but not when it was going on. No. Like if he hit me, I didn't say, oh, it's my fault. I shouldn't have said that. That never was something that came in my mind like other people say. Like, well, if I wouldn't have said that, he wouldn't have hit me. So it's my fault if I wouldn't have said it. So I never had that idea that it was my fault, but now I do. So yeah.
Well, I can totally understand that. Now, this next question, and just to let you guys know, I appreciate you coming up and telling your stories. Everybody watching on YouTube, everybody watching on Facebook, I appreciate you tuning in. Wisdom app, I appreciate you. I have 3 more questions for these ladies on the panel. This question here may be a little heavy, so I understand if you don't want to answer it, it's fine. But the question is, while you were dealing with this physical and emotional abuse, did it ever cross over into sexual abuse? I'm sorry. Lisa, you can answer first. Then we'll go to Cookie, then Datria, then TT.
For my friend, I don't, if it happened like that, she never talked about it. We were very open, but of course, there are some things that are even too embarrassing or people view too embarrassing to see. I'm the opposite way. I'll stand up on a pedestal and talk about anything.
Mhm.
For my female uh, family member, to my knowledge, it never was. To my knowledge, it never was. Um, the only thing, like even remotely, is he want to say stuff like, "Oh, you're trying to get men's attention," but it never got to that extent, to my knowledge.
Okay. What about
Yeah.
you, Becky?
He would just pay me back by cheating. So if he felt like I either dressed too provocatively or if I um, was too strong that day, he would just find somebody else.
Wow. How about you, Datra? Do you know if your mother experienced that? And when I say sexual abuse, I'm talking about, because a lot of times men that abuse their women, they'll take sex forcefully. And I think I saw a movie one time. It was about domestic violence, and the husband would literally rape the wife, but the courts wouldn't look at it that way. They was like, "Oh, that's your wife. You can't rape your wife." Well, I disagree with that. But what do you say on that, Atria?
I disagree with it as well. I don't think my dad did, because my mom was more sexual than he was. Like, she wanted it all the time. But I think she was more sexual than he was. But yeah, but in most cases, there are abusers that do, even though they've been abusing you, they'll still want to have sex with you as if nothing has happened, without your approval. And I do consider that sexual abuse.
I agree. What
Yes.
about you, TT?
I agree with her. If you would get beat up, and then if you had sex and you didn't want to, it wasn't your choice, really. So what Deetra said is true. The ending of it. So it is sexual abuse. Yes.
Okay, now did they ever abuse you in front of the kids? And TT, you can start. Then we'll go to Lisa, then Cookie and Patriot.
The one in particular, one that we're speaking of, never. He would put my. What would be funny is he would put my kids in another room and put the TV on, so cartoons would be on, and then I would have to be in the living room, so they could be in the bedroom and they could watch TV and they'd have their little snacks, so they would never know. So, but I think the older they got, you can't keep everything a secret. I can't keep them locked in their room forever. So with that in particular situation, I had 2 kids at the time, so he would put them in a room and have them watch TV or shut the door or whatever, but it was never in front of them. I think I've had occasions with other domestic violences, where my kids have seen it, and this is being older now. This was maybe a couple years, 5 years ago, where my kids have jumped in. So it's like tag teaming in here. So it's like now that I had a voice and I can stick up for myself, and I feel like if you're gonna put your hands on me, then I'm gonna put my hands back on you, and I'm not settling for less. So when he put his hands on me, I put my hands on him, and then my kids jumped in. So it's to the point where, like, if my kids have to jump into then I don't need you around, because I don't feel like, what if he would? Okay, if you are to harm my kids in a situation like that, then I would have felt bad. But my kids jumping in to save, they're saving me. They're trying to help me. So they're building up their little crew to come and fight too. But it's like, it never, the worst relationship that I was in, my kids never seen it. But the older my kids are now, they've seen a couple incidents but they're older. They're like, you know, they were seeing it at like 16, 15, 14. They weren't seeing it when they were like 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what I mean? They were being hidden from that. I think I kept that a secret to my kids. Like, I wouldn't let my kids see me with a black eye. You're crazy. If you were going to beat me, I would cover my face. I'm not letting you. I have to look at my kids every day. You might not have to look at, you know what I mean? He might not have to look at his kids every day, but I have to wake up with my kids. I have to feed them. I have to bathe them. I have to dress them. They have to look at me. So whether you're around or not, I'm that mother and that father at the end of the day during that time. And I'll be damned if I was ever, and I know that sounds bad, but as many domestic violence relationships that I was in, I would never allow them to get, maybe that's not good to brag about, but I've never had a black eye. You know what I mean? I've always been the one to cover up my face. You're not going to touch this because I need to see my kids. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it was just, I wouldn't let my kids see it. I think they seen it when they were older, but I was more like, and if this happens to you when you get, you know what I mean? This is not what you're going to do. And this is not who, you know what I mean? So it's more like, this is a lesson. You see him put his hands on me. This is not the life you want to live. Don't do it. And that's what I've taught them since I've seen that. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't let my kids, I didn't want my kids to see that. And I didn't want my kids to see me hurt. So even if I had a broke rib, a busted head, a towel wrapped around it, I wouldn't want them to know that I was hurt by that person.
I got you. And I totally understand that. And I'm not going to act like I remember what order I said this was going on. So whoever remembered who was going next.
Right. There you go.
It may have been Cookie. Was it Cookie?
I'm sorry. Can you please repeat the question? I was into what TT was saying.
Did they ever abuse you in front of the kids?
Yes. My oldest daughter, who is 22, vaguely remembers some things. And during 2020, it was actually starting to have flashbacks and PTSD from that. It's funny how traumatic situations sometimes can unlock other traumatic situations that you may have repressed memories. And so during 2020 was rough for us, another wild situation with men in my life. And she was able to recall some stories that I thought she didn't know. So yeah, they remember. She remembers now. My middle daughter was too young to remember at the time, but my oldest does remember some situations.
Oh, okay. What about you, Daytra? Did you say that you did see?
Yes. Now I'm the oldest of 4 girls. And most of the time when the physical abuse happened, it was late at night. And it happened like I already knew when it was going to come on, just when my dad started that first drink. And it would like they'd be having just the best time. And then, you know, when he got over to the point to where he was too drunk, you know, so I actually witnessed it. And we were supposed to be in the bed sleep. I always, you know, like wanted to protect my sisters from not hearing it, but I would hear everything. And to this day, I'm like a night hawk. I don't even sleep like heavy. I'm a light sleeper because of that. But I was always afraid that he would end up killing her. So I did stay up, and I used to hear everything and hear all the arguments and the criticism, and you know, so I actually saw him physically abuse her. And but like I said, sometimes the next day it was almost like my dad was blacked out or something. He didn't remember what happened.
Wow.
You know.
And Lisa, did your family members and friends ever tell you that it happened in front of their children, or did they even have children?
Well, my friend didn't have kids. My female family member, it happened multiple times in front of her kids. I think in that environment, it was so commonplace that it was almost accepted. It was accepted, and it was viewed as, oh, you know what, you don't get into it because it's a man and woman thing and they're just gonna be back together the next day. That was the perception. The A lot of the times the cops wouldn't touch it because of that, because it's like, what, what's the point of you, getting her help? She's just gonna turn around and be with him again.
Mm.
But like I said, there was one point, me and my sister, we jumped on his back, because it's like, no, we're not just gonna sit around. And that was when I was young. But I also know that if that would have happened when I was older, like maybe like 12, it would have been a different ball game, because so there are some women in our culture who there is they talk about different ways of getting back at men who physically abuse women. And I don't want to incriminate myself here or say things that are too devious to be, that gets your show canceled or anything like that.
You're fine. Oh, they can't get me.
All right. Okay. All right. All right. So in the Caribbean, you physically abusive? There's one way. Oh my God, I can't believe I'm saying this. But you would literally put on a pot with oil, cooking oil, and you'd boil it, and you'd throw it on them.
Well, that sounds worse than the Al Green grits.
Yeah. They'd say, oh, he's abusive, you gotta boil oil for him. There's also the route of voodoo. I know that's not talked about, but there's also that. You get your male family members to deal with them. Yeah. That was there any other?
I heard of some.
We use machetes too. Like
I was about to say, yeah.
We use machetes too. And growing up, like my dad always carried one in his waist, like whenever we were going out with him, like as a family, he always had a machete in the waist of his pants. So yeah, like, not even though it's commonplace and everything like that, not everyone took it.
Yeah.
Not everyone took it. And there's some people who like went really, this one is kind of a little bit harsher, basically the equivalent of hydrochloric acid, like you'd put that on them. So there's definitely people who fight back.
Yeah.
But I don't know what makes a person fight back. I know that me experiencing it secondhand, I had that mentality. But I don't know if a person who's in it would be able to do that, because it is so draining. It is so draining. It drains you mentally, physically. It affects your health in every single way. Every single way. So for the people that don't fight back, like, I would say, if I were in it and I had kids, if I couldn't fight for myself, I would fight for my kids. That would probably be the only thing that would keep me going, is to fight for my kids.
Yeah, And speaking of kids, that's going to flow into the last question that I have here. I mean, I know I've held you ladies a long time. I will say I appreciate, again, you coming up and sharing your stories with everyone. I know for a fact there's going to be a lot of people that are helped from hearing the things that you've been through, how you came out of it. There's going to be a lot of healing from it. And hopefully, you know, it even makes you feel a little better, you know, to release some of the stuff and to see that how far you've come from that area there. But this last question I have for you is, have you ever seen similar traits in your children? Cookie, you want to start us off?
Hold on, let me check the room real quick. So one of my daughters, I have recognized some behavior. I think the good thing that I can say out of that is that she recognizes it in herself, which is the positive thing, because I don't even have to say anything anymore. And she'll come back and say, I shouldn't have done this. I should have done, like, she sees it and she does do something about it. So that's the good thing. I was so concerned at one point, like, oh my God, she is her father's child. But, you know, she definitely has, I know in front of me, I can't tell you what she does when she's away from me, because she knows I'll call her on it. But, you know, and I always try to make sure, even with the stuff I see, I have a conversation with her about why those things aren't good, why it's not good to be verbally abusive to people. And, you know, just because you're friends doesn't mean that they're always going to want to talk with you that way. You know, you can't mistreat people just because they're your friend. And so I think that she has come a long way from that. But yeah, I definitely recognized not necessarily the physical abuse, but the mental and emotional abuse. Yeah, I definitely recognized not necessarily the physical abuse.
Now, Datria, do you ever feel like you as a child kind of felt some of those things, or did you see it in your sisters? Some of the traits that your father had that weren't so good?
I did. I feel like I did see it, and probably on different occasions on two of my sisters. And then, you know, because like it's a cycle, and sometimes it can skip over one generation to the next one, because I even noticed it even in my daughter, you know. So, you know, but it's a cycle that needs to be broken. And like I said, if you just know who you are, then you won't allow it to affect you. But it can affect you if you don't get help. So I feel like I got help from it. And, you know, so, and it won't always in a continuous, you have to continuously break that cycle.
Mm-hmm. That's very important, to breaking the cycle. But I think a lot of times before that cycle can be broken, it's like you guys were saying before, you have to know yourself. You have to start loving yourself and cherishing yourself. And then, and only then, you'll start thinking, okay, this can't go on anymore. This has to stop somewhere.
Because even in my childhood, I was like, why is my family so dysfunctional? Like, why do we have to always go through this chaos all the time? That's why I consciously, like, intentionally create peace in my environment. And I intentionally, because I didn't really have a childhood, I was always like the mother figure for my sisters, that I'm going to have fun, you know? So, but anybody that really know me know that when we go somewhere, we're going to have a good time. But I just know who I am. And if I didn't, because of even my current, I've been married for 30 years, you know, I could allow myself to get depressed and not know who I am. Because sometimes you can accept certain behaviors because you saw it and it was accepted. But, you know, you have to just know who you are. Just know who you are. And don't allow the negative things to affect you.
Exactly. Now, TT, have you seen some of the traits of abusers in your children? You muted yourself again.
Okay, sorry.
There you go.
And my kid right now, I see the traits. I see all of them. She has the anger. She explodes fast. She's quick to react. She's went to counseling, so a lot of that has calmed down. But she definitely has this trait. I feel that she's a loose. She could be a loose bomb at any time,
Mm.
at any point, because he has no limit. And I feel sometimes that she might find that point too, at in a situation. She might come to that point. So I've seen it in her. She's been in a lot of fights growing up. She's been in the high school. She was in a lot of fights from ninth grade until 11th, until the counseling started. So arrested. She's been tackled by the police. She's been like, the traits are there. I see her. I see him all in her. And sometimes it's scary because you don't know, you know what he's capable of. So do you sit and say, I know my kid is capable of it as well? But you also have to tell her the things that she feeling, and she knows that she can go from 0 to 1,000. Is, do you know the consequences that come after that? So you being at this age right now where something can take her from 0 to 1,000 really quick, and you see his temper come out in her. Oh, I see that. I see that. She's 0 and can completely black out and shut out, and you don't know what that impact is going to happen between her and that other person. But I also try to tell her now, like, slow down, because she's been in a couple of predicaments in the past couple of years, and where I feel that she were in a couple situations, and I feel one of the times she could have went to jail if she would have went through with it, what she was gonna do, But there's also, you have to sit down and talk to him like you're not that person. You know what I mean? Like you're not who he is, or you can't become who he is, because there's consequences, and he doesn't show you that his consequences, he redeems he doesn't do that. So now how do I show her that if she comes into something where now she has consequences and she runs like he does, now what happens? So you're going to be like him? So I don't know. The only way to break that from her now is to continuously tell her there's consequences. You have a life. She went to school. She finished. She graduated. She went to criminal justice. She graduated that. She got accepted in 2 different colleges. She accepted one of them and went for 1 semester. So like she changed herself, around. Like I was happy because that's something that I didn't finish school, so I didn't graduate. So when she walked down that aisle, or any of my kids walked down the aisle, that was something like I did that. You know what I mean? So to have her see that she can change a 360 around, and that she has, is the best feeling in the world, because I don't want to have to see my child locked up behind bars because she puts her hands on her girlfriend, or, takes it to another level. I don't want to see my daughter locked up because you couldn't keep your hands to yourself. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not worth it. If your girlfriend says something to you you don't like, there's an argument, but don't put your hands on them because there's consequences. And I know that she can go from 0 to 100, so it's not going to be a smack. You know what I mean? Like your dad wasn't giving smacks to me, there were love taps. So I know what she's capable of, and I do see the traits in her, and it worries me a lot.
Now, has she sought help for that? Has she talked to anybody?
She's went to counseling for mental health.
Okay. Well, I'm going to, with this last thing here, I want to start with Lisa, and we're going to go around the Datria, then Cookie, then TT can end it out. But what I want you to do is, if if there's a young lady or even a young man, but we know that this happens a lot with women. But if there's a young lady watching or listening right now and is going through a situation, I want you to speak directly to this person and give them a little bit of advice or a little bit of insight on this to help them. Starting with you, Lisa.
All right. If you're in a domestic violence situation, the first thing you need to know is that you're not alone. There are so many support systems out there, and don't let them get into your head. Don't believe the things they're saying to you, because it's when you believe and accept those things that the abuse will get worse. Even if you don't want to fight for yourself, fight for your kids. It doesn't matter how highly he's regarded. It doesn't matter how much connections he has. No one has the right to put their hands on you. Nobody. I don't care how you were brought up, you know, the values you were taught to be a stoic person, and just, you don't have to get abused to feel loved. And if someone's hurting you, they don't love you, because you do not hurt people who you love. And it doesn't matter how lonely it feels, how hopeless it feels, there's always hope, and it has to end. And you don't want it to end with you being in a grave, and then you don't know who is going to take care of your kids.
That's so true. Thank you for that, Datra.
Okay, I ditto what Lisa said, to let them know, actually, to seek help and to know that you are not alone. And I believe we put some numbers there where you can call down 211 for assistance. I feel like for me, dealing with it, because it does affect the children, prayer was key for me, fasting and praying, daily affirmations, times of daily meditations and moments of silence, and just changing my mindset, because, that's what I'm all about now, is breaking poverty mindsets. And my slogan that I always live with is, if you can change your mind, you can change your life. And just believing in yourself and that you deserve the best life, and just surrounding yourself around people. And if you can't go public, go to somebody and tell somebody and talk about it. Because if you can have someone to talk to, it can release, and that talking about it can definitely give you healing. But getting counseling and therapy is so important.
Thank you so much for that. Cookie.
You are deserving of a love that does not hurt. You are deserving of people who aren't abusive to you, your appearance, any of that. Anybody that's being negative to you in a way that's not helping you, you don't need them in your life. And there's nothing wrong with cutting people off and moving on with your life in peace. So find the things that, I found that finding things that made me happy helped me to make other decisions in my life, to cut people out of my life, to cut situations out of my life. So find something that you love to do. And once you find love for something, you'll start finding love for yourself.
That's good. That's deep. TT, finish it out. Tell them something that'll save their lives. Did TT freeze up on us? I think you froze, TT, but yeah, she froze up. But I'm gonna say again, ladies, thank you so much for sharing your stories, for giving the wonderful advice that you gave, all of the numbers for people to look into and call if they need assistance. It's greatly appreciated. The strength that all of you have shown, I'm sure, is motivating and inspiring to someone is definitely inspiring to me. I didn't even get into some of the situations that I know about because I wanted tonight to be all about things that you guys had to bring to the table because I know how very important that it is. So I thank you. I appreciate you. Continue to press forward. Continue to be the strong women that you are. Continue to inspire others. Definitely continue to help others like you're already doing. You're amazing people. And I say that with all sincerity. I say it from the bottom of my heart. Continue to be who you are and continue to strive for greatness. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm gonna let you guys get you some rest and some food and whatever else you gotta get. See, I haven't gotten to eat anything else yet, but I'm trying to get my summer body ready. But yeah, I need some of whatever that is you snacking on, Cookie. But I am going to keep the lines open on Wisdom App because there were some people that came up that wanted to talk earlier. Hopefully they'll come back up. I'm gonna keep that open for a little bit. Prayer is key. Fasting and praying affirmations, daily meditation, and moments of silence. Always seek help when you're going through something. That came from Miss Datria Sims. And that's, Lord knows that's the truth. Because not only do we have to strengthen our physical bodies, but we have to strengthen our spiritual bodies as well. So people, thank you all for tuning in on Facebook and YouTube. And I'm going to shut this party down, but I'm going to keep the Wisdom App open. So, I'm going to chat on there for a little bit. But thank you, ladies. I'll be talking to you all soon. It won't be such a heavy topic the next time I may ask you to come on, but I appreciate you all. Thank you so much.
Appreciate you.
Blessings.
Thank you. It was nice meeting all of you.
Bye, ladies. Thank you. Blessings.
All right, y'all. That was a very, very deep show we had tonight. I've shut down. Well, no, I'm gonna keep Facebook and YouTube up too. But if anyone on Wisdom wants to come up and speak about this, I'm gonna keep it open. I'm gonna keep the lines open for a little bit. If you've dealt with domestic violence, or if you know someone who has, or if you just want to encourage someone else, now's the time. You have the floor. You can come up and speak if you choose. I would play some music or something while I wait to see if somebody gonna come up, but I swear, y'all, every time that I do that, somehow I get banned in a certain part of Russia. And it's only Russia so far that's doing it to me. It's always a different little town or something like that too. No matter what I say, no matter what I put up, I get an email from YouTube telling me that the music, there was some kind of copyright infringement and I'm getting banned. So I'm not going to play any music just yet. But that was a very good show, though. There was a lot of times where I had to suck the tears back because there was a lot of very touching things that I was hearing. And I know a woman, well, I actually unfortunately know a couple women who've dealt with domestic violence. And one of them, it was pretty much the same as those ladies were talking about, where making them feel that it's their fault, acting like he could do no wrong, and the slightest little thing he would hit her or push her or something like that. And this particular guy was doing things in front of the kids too, because normally when you have a man that will degrade a woman or hit a woman or talk down on her or anything of that nature, they normally do not care about doing things in front of children. Now, most of them won't do those things in front of another man, but they would definitely do it in front of girlfriends or friends of the lady that they're with or the children, people that they feel like can't fight back. And so it's unfortunate that it happens, but it actually does happen. So anyone that knows anybody in those situations, or if you're in that situation, please, please, please get help. Call those numbers. Some of those numbers that I posted up, 211 is one of the numbers, I believe. Another one was 800-799-7233. And I know it's not always easy to get out of those situations. And there are a lot of reasons that some people stay in them, but I can tell you this, those things won't just go away. He or she is not just going to stop abusing you one day. It's going to get worse and worse. And we all know and we all see it, how a lot of those situations end. And I don't want to see anyone end up in the grave over something like that. I'm sure you guys don't either. So try your best to help those that you see in those situations. But stay safe yourself at the same time, because we know we live in a different time now. And a lot of times just trying to help somebody can get you in a world to hurt yourself. So definitely be safe out there, and definitely keep people in your prayers, and continue to be good people. If that's who you are, continue to be good people, because a lot of times that positive energy can spread out to somebody else, and you never know how much a smile means to someone. You never know how much a extended hand can mean to somebody, because we don't know what people are going through in their private lives. So try to be good people, and try to pass forward a little bit of that positive energy that you can feel for yourself. I don't think anybody coming up on wisdom. Maybe it's too late. Maybe everybody doing what I should be doing, and that's getting something to eat and getting into bed. But I thank all of you for tuning in. Facebook, YouTube, Wisdom app, Spotify, Apple Podcast. I thank you so much. And everybody that's on Wisdom right now, I got 66 people in here right now. Could all of you please go over to YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube channel? It is King Shed Productions. That's my YouTube channel. Please subscribe so that when I do these every Thursday, you can be right there with me when I'm doing these shows, and you can see it as well as hear it. And if nothing else, just subscribe to support me, because I'm trying to grow this. You know, the sky's the limit. Want to grow it as much as possible, so a lot of these shows and a lot of these topics can go out to all those that need to hear it. Because I said in the beginning, my goal is to motivate, uplift, and inspire people. It is to bridge the gap between men and women. I want men to understand women better, and I want women to understand men better. And I also want to create that solid foundation for our youth so that they don't fall by the wayside. We have way too many of our youth that are going into the judicial system, way too many of our people that are killing one another and harming one another. And it's a far leap and a deep wish for global peace. But the only way we're going to attempt to get there is one day at a time, one step at a time, one person at a time. So please help me out with trying to do that. I want to thank everyone that was on the panel tonight, speaking and giving their stories. I thank you so much. And we'll be doing it again with another topic next Thursday. I'll be back to 8 o'clock. I know it was 8:30 today, but it'll be back to 8 o'clock next Thursday. Thank you all for spending some time with me. See you next week.